Well, this is the next chapter of the Speaker's Primer. This is chapter 5, as found on Top Hat, Speaking in Your Career. There are a number of factors that involve how I'm going to lecture on this. One is that speaking in your career, when you learn to do public speaking, you will go out and do public speaking in a lot of different environments. You're going to do public speaking anyway, you might as well learn how to do it well. My wife's not a huge fan of public speaking, but on occasion, her boss will suddenly ask her to stand up in front of the department and tell something that she's doing that she wasn't expecting to get up and do. As you learn to do public speaking, most of the things that we're going to talk about in class carry over into that environment or to any other environment, but business, education, whatever it may be. The book talk about some important things, though. It does talk about contextual factors. The external environment. Where are you when you're doing the speech? You're outside, and there's noise around you. You may need a speaker, or you may need to project more. What's the size of the audience? There are various factors that can really determine what it is you're doing in that speech. The speaking format, it could be in person, it could be online, especially with these days and in this day and age of COVID and this pandemic. A lot of this is being done online now. Some general audience characteristics, and we'll get more to that in the chapter on audience analysis, but you have to know who you're speaking to in terms of the fact that there is one way that you might talk to a group of people if you are the department chair, the department head, and they are your employees. And of course, there are similarities and there are differences. And there's another way you might speak to a group of people if you're actually been called before a group of people that are all above you and sort of on the ladder. Something to think about in terms of that. But their general audience characteristics you need to think about. Well, I know there'll be more in the chapter on audience analysis on that. Speaking in different fields and professions, of course, politics is very different. How we speak in politics, how people speak in politics is very different. There's just sort of a style that there is to it. It's not the same as when you're lecturing. Same as preaching versus teaching versus speaking in politics. There are differences in forcefulness and in power and dynamics that you might use. For educators, I think that there are good teachers who are very good at public speaking, and there are those who are not quite as good. But the biggest factor to me in terms of public speaking is if you're going to be an educator, you're going to speak in the education field, you should talk about something that you care about. If you care about the topic, it's going to come out in your voice. Very important thing. Talks about the STEM fields, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. The biggest factor there is make sure you know your stuff. Do not come to the table with information that's not right up to the minute. I tell my students this when they're going to give a speech in class. Do not come to class and not have checked the morning paper to see if something happened in regard to the topic that you're covering. In business settings, again, we've talked about that a little bit already. The healthcare settings, all of this really is just knowing your material. Make sure you are ready and make sure that you know your material. Make sure you know what it is you're talking about. You don't want to talk in a way that insults a group of people. If you're talking to a group of nurses or doctors or whoever it might be, you just have to make sure you know your material and that you're prepared. If you're working for a company, it could be in the healthcare fields, it could be other fields, and whenever you're asked to do a speech, it's very clear that you're not ready. It's very clear that you didn't care enough to do the preparation that was warranted to do a good job on that speech. Along the way, people, companies they seem to find a way to lay off somebody. Say, well, you know what, we've changed our company. We don't need a parts manager anymore. And after you're gone, then they advertise for a parts coordinator. Just be ready wherever environment it may be. That's the end of this chapter. I'm not going to lecture more on that. Again, a lot of the principles that we talk about in this class carry over and they apply to these